Welcome to Life with Beth and Court,
where we teach you how to live authentically and build your best life.
one step at a time.
A mic check.
What are we doing for our mic check today?
Well, since we're in the spirit of talking about things we wish we would have known when we were younger, I cannot think of a better song, and I have no idea who sings it, which is very odd for me. But I remember it goes like this. I wish that I knew what I know now. When I was younger, I wish that I knew what I know now. When I was younger. Literally the only lyrics I know.
So perfect.
Who sings that?
So perfect.
Anyone know? Feel like it's the same people who sing the Matilda song. Boy. Do you remember that one?
I sure don't.
Boy. Did you not watch Matilda?
No, I think that scared me.
Really?
Yeah.
Because she had superpowers?
No, because they were mean to her.
Oh. Trenchbull?
Everyone was, and her parents, everyone was mean to her. And I hated it.
I hated that too. But Miss Honey adopted her, didn't she?
I think so.
Oops. Sorry if no one's watched that yet. I feel like
Spoiler
everyone's
alert.
seen Matilda. Let's see. Who sings this song? Oh, it's from Without a Paddle soundtrack. That's what Dax is in.
Oh, it is what Dax is in. I like him. Welcome back to another episode of Life with Beth and Court. I'm Beth.
I'm Court.
And today we're talking about This is 30.
Dun, dun,
what
dun.
we wish we knew when we were younger.
I'm so excited for this.
I just want to clarify, you know that we're older than 30, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I just wanted to make sure because I've seen you stall before when someone asks your age and you're like, I actually don't know.
Well, that's actually what inspired this thought of mine to do this episode.
Because you forgot your age?
Yeah. And I knew my birthday was coming up soon. And I was just asked my age last week at the Verizon store. And it took me a second. And then I had to count from 1988 and like do the math. And so I was thinking about that I'm going to be 32 and thinking of all the things.
You know they can hear you when you whisper still.
Yeah, but like it's not as intense of a number when you whisper it.
It's also a very odd place to be asked your age in the Verizon store.
It's a very long story. That could be a whole nother conversation. Anyway, so I was thinking about, okay, I'm going to be 32. And naturally, because I overanalyze the crap out of everything, I started thinking about what it's been like in our 30s so far and like all of the things I wish I would have known before 30 and all of the lessons I've learned. So that's what inspired this episode of This is 30, because we are going to share with you lessons. And are most of yours lessons, like life lessons?
Mine are mostly what I wish I knew.
Yes. And so this is going to be really fun because Beth Ann and I have not shared our lessons with each other. We each
Sure haven't.
Yeah, I was like, it would be fun if we each just made a list of our top 5 lessons and then we shared them with each other on the podcast. So you're going to get like the raw, organic, which that's what they get anyway. I don't know why I hype it up so much. That's literally every podcast. But I'm excited to do this and talk through these things. And I think it's cool because if you're younger than us, this would be interesting to listen to and say, do I know these things? Or do I wish I had known these things? Or is this something I can reach out and learn about now before I'm 30? And if you're older than us, I think it would be really interesting to see what that looks like for them too. Like, do they know these lessons? Do they wish they would have known these lessons?
And if you're the same age as us, are you wishing you knew the same things back in your 20s?
Yeah. I'm kind of wondering if some people are going to be like, I already knew that when I was 20. Well, good for you. We are still learning and sharing.
All right, so let's kick this off. Let's just go back and forth, and
Oh, I'm so excited.
I'll say mine, or let's have you start. So you'll start with your first one, and then I'll go with my first one, and then we'll go back and forth like that.
Okay.
Deal?
Can you see how hard I'm smiling right now?
Yeah, you just sat crisscross applesauce.
Hands
like
in my
on
lap.
the couch. Yeah, ready to go.
Yeah.
You are ready to roll.
Okay.
All right, so let's kick this off. What is the first lesson that you wish you knew before your 30s?
It's not in order, right? Because I feel like you just put a lot of pressure on that.
No.
Okay.
The order is random.
Phew, thank you. Okay.
You're welcome.
I'm ready now. So my number one lesson that I wish I would have learned when I was younger is that you don't always have to, air quote, tough it out and push through it, end air quote. Why are you giggling?
Yeah, no, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that. Why is there something in particular that you're thinking about?
Yeah, I think that it came from a place of love to help me protect myself as I got older, so that when people hurt my feelings or when something got hard, that I just pushed through it or toughed it out, or like if a relationship got hard, like that was just the mentality that was presented. And I think it came from a place of love, but at the same time, reflecting on where I'm at now and where I was, I think of how many times that put me in a situation to not just allow myself to be human.
Yeah.
And identify what was happening and being like, no, this is a really hard situation, and it's okay to give yourself some time to process it or have emotions or whatever you need to do. And I feel like I'm a more emotional person now. And I know that I was more sensitive and emotional when I was a kid, like when I was a younger kid, and very shy and reserved. But there's like this whole space in between that feels like a freight train. Like I just had my armor on and I was like nose to the ground, get it done, work, push through. And then I flash back to like these intermittent meltdowns I would have in between because I didn't allow myself to just process and feel and work through it in the way that I needed to, because the voice in the back of my head was like, suck it up, tough it out, push through it. And so I forced myself to live in this freight train world where you just push through, you push through, you push through. And because I didn't process it along the way, it resulted in some really big meltdowns.
Well, and it also is just applying a blanket statement to all situations in life rather than arming you with the tools of discernment.
Yeah.
When you could understand, you know, when you talked about relationships, for instance, is this just a tough spot in a relationship? Is this something we need to work through? Or is this relationship actually toxic for me and I need to get out of it?
Right. And without that discernment or those levels of being applicable, it was very black and white. Like, you just tough it out. It's not a choice. And I feel like I would have made a lot of decisions differently in my life had I had that discernment and gave myself permission to say, it's okay to not be okay right now. It's okay to talk it through with a friend. It's okay to weigh the situation and look at whether this is healthy for me and what I need to do. So that was a really big lesson for me.
That's a good one.
Thanks.
I would agree with it too.
Yeah, it's a good one.
My first lesson that I reflected on was I wish that I knew that I didn't have to be perfect and that every attempt wasn't going to be a home run.
Oof.
Yeah. So I think I grew up with a bit of a performance complex because it felt good when I was recognized because my grades were all A's or because I was a good athlete or whatever. I seemed to perform my way to the top of the charts and I felt good about myself based on how I could perform. And so I got used to being the top performer, whether it was in school or in sports or whatever. And then when I got to college, things got a little harder. I still fared well. And I still played sports and got great grades and all of that stuff. But I think that the first time I experienced feedback that wasn't like, whoa, your paper was mind blowing. And it was instead like, good, try to think about it from this way and see if you can, make it different next time. And I was like,
excuse
what
me?
are you talking about? They hate me. They hate me. This is an embarrassment. And so I think learning to take feedback and understand that when a professor's giving you feedback or a coach is giving you feedback or something, that it's not that you suck, right? Because that's basically what it equated to in my mind. Like if I didn't get 100% and if I got any negative feedback, which is truly just constructive, but I just absolutely took it to heart and it destroyed me and it affected how I felt about myself and my self-confidence. And so I wish my younger self knew like, hey, this is all part of the process. This is how you get better.
Yeah.
Because if every paper said, you're perfect, way to go, like it doesn't make you better. And so I think that I could have learned that lesson a lot quicker and had it not knock me down so many notches when I did first receive feedback.
Right? Because on the other side of perfectionism is failure. Like when you're a perfectionist, anything that's not perfect is failure. And to be honest, I still struggle with that sometimes, not nearly as much as I used to. And I tell people I'm a recovering perfectionist and they laugh about it, but it's a very serious thing. And for you, it was more external, and for me it was internal. So I would hold myself to these ridiculous standards, and so when I wouldn't meet them, that failure was within myself, which was super dangerous because that can lead you down a very slippery path.
Well, and the research is showing now that perfectionism is linked to higher levels of anxiety and depression, and even suicide. There was a stat that Marie Forleo gave in her latest book. It's Everything is Figure Outable, which is fantastic.
So good.
Everyone go get it. It's amazing. Good. I've listened to it like 3 times and it only came out like a month ago. But she mentioned that the statistics are alarmingly high for those who have died by suicide, that their friends and family reported them as perfectionists. And so it's a really crippling way of moving through life. So that was one thing that I wish that I could have figured out a little bit sooner in my 20s.
Absolutely.
So what's your number 2?
Oh my gosh. I feel like this is Christmas. Like I can't stop smiling and I'm so excited to hear what you're going to say and that we're having this conversation. Okay. Focus, Courtney. So this is probably my biggest one, and I'm just going to drop it right in the middle of the podcast.
Do it.
The number 2 thing I wish I would have known before 30 is find out who you are and what you believe and love before trying to commit to anyone else.
Ooh.
Now, I'm going to just throw this out there. I was a little bit of a serial dater. No,
all right.
Serial relationshipper.
All right.
And it's because how I believed things was that you date someone, it becomes a long-term relationship, you get married, you have babies. Like there was this predetermined pathway, we'll say. And I wish someone would have told me not every relationship has to go into a long-term thing. Like it doesn't have to be a 3 or 4 year stint. And that was my pattern.
If you knew me in college, I mean, I could have taught you that. Mine lasted like 2 weeks. And I was like, I'm out.
Where were you?
I'm out. Turns out when you date someone, you have to spend a lot of time with them.
I was a serial relationshipper, and when I think about how I could have been spending that time to develop myself and grow and learn and just immerse myself in knowledge and start that journey for myself that I've started within the past few years, I didn't have that. And I would tell myself, go date and have fun. And the other side of that is I don't know how it was for you when we were in school.
Probably opposite.
Probably. So I'm just going to put it out there. But like if you start dating someone and it didn't work out, you like didn't talk to that person ever again.
Oh no, that's very opposite. I actually went to my ex-boyfriend's wedding.
Oh, yeah. That's very different.
Yeah.
Well, that's what it was. Like you just stopped talking to that person. So the other piece of this, like I wish someone would have told me it's just okay to date and get to know people and have fun. I wish someone also would have told me it's okay to be friends and would have encouraged strong male friendships at a young age, because it was kind of like you'd meet someone, they're like, oh, I like you. Well, okay, like whatever, let's do this. Let's try dating. And then it didn't work. And then that relationship would end. And so it really took me a long time. Like it wasn't until the past couple of years that I really built these strong relationships with men in my life that were purely platonic, and that I have them like brothers in my life. And so along with the serial dating relationshiping, I wish someone would have said it's okay to just be friends with males. Yeah,
that I feel like is a totally opposite lesson of like I was friends with guys all my life, and it was actually, I feel like my mom was a little worried and she's like, do you want to be friends with any girls? I'm like, meh, they're annoying.
Yeah.
So I had learned that in a different way, but even in college when I would become really good friends, and like you said, like kind of when you get to that age, the natural progression is like, well, we really enjoy spending time together. Like, what if we dated?
We must date. Like, that's the next step of what happens.
Yeah. And I kind of was just like, don't be weird. And they're like, oh, okay. Yeah, no. So
well, you didn't have that lesson then. For me, that was like, I wish I would have had that.
Well, and I think for me, though, the biggest thing is that relationships weren't really like an attractive thing to me. It wasn't something that I craved. I just wanted to like pursue my goals and be left alone, kind of. And I liked having good friends, but it seemed like having a relationship was just like this huge time suck. And
it was.
Yeah.
There are 4 years of my life, 3 years, 2 years I will never get back.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my biggest lesson.
So that was your biggest lesson overall.
It's like tied with another one, I
Tied
think.
with another
I'll
one.
figure it
Okay.
out. You know I'm indecisive. What's your second one?
All right. My second one is that I wish I had learned effective confrontation and communication skills a lot earlier. Because I think I let myself get walked on a lot because I didn't know how to communicate what I was feeling, and that I wasn't feeling respected or loved or whatever at the time. And so I just let it go because I didn't know how to bring it up without sounding mean. And
Right.
so I didn't want to hurt someone else's feelings when I was feeling hurt. And rather than kind of fumbling my way through that process, I just kind of shut up.
Yeah.
And
I think a lot of people do that.
Yeah. And I didn't know how to say anything that was negative feedback, I guess. Like,
I think that's the association with it. People think that confrontation is negative, but truthfully, it's just uncomfortable.
right. So like to say to someone like, what you just said really hurt my feelings. That is never, ever a sentence that would have come out of my mouth. We joke about this. I never even talked about my feelings until I met you and you forced me to.
I was going to be a smart ass and be like, so when did you learn about confrontation? Who is this brilliant, beautiful, sexy person who taught you about this?
Well, I was on your couch and I never took my jacket or my mittens off, and I looked straight ahead and didn't make eye contact because it made me so uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was real interesting.
But that's a story for a different time. So basically, I just wish that I had known better communication skills and confrontation skills at all, not fighting skills, because I think until that time, what I knew was just fighting skills. Like when someone hurt you, you hurt them back. And
it's a defense mechanism.
It's a defense mechanism. And rather than hurting people back, I wanted to work through it, but I didn't know how. And so, like I said, I just let myself get walked on a bit too much. And then resentment would build until the day that, I actually did hurt them back because all of this had been building inside.
I think a lot of people probably still struggle with that through all ages. So that's a good one.
So what is your number 3 lesson that you wish you had known earlier?
I got to flip my paper back over because I thought you were peeking at my notes. Oh my God. I can't believe I'm admitting this to you of all people.
Ooh, this is going to be good.
Lesson 3. I wish I would have learned how to budget.
Heyo, there it is.
Save money and be financially responsible. And then I wrote interest rates, college loans, blah, blah, blah. So you get that point.
Yeah. No, the blah, blah, blah sounds especially on target for you.
Yes. But truthfully, I mean, we've had this conversation with our friends too, that, we think there's an importance in learning history and what's happened in the world when we're in school. But we also think there was a critical piece missing of real world skills. And for me, that was financials. And so like I can think of the home ec class I had. We made monkey bread.
Monkey bread, we did too.
And we sewed pillows. And if anyone ever
I think we
needs
did laundry.
a hand sewn pillow that's in the shape of an animal, I've got you.
Really? Why have
made-
you not sewn me an animal
I made
pillow
this
yet?
really cool frog because I was obsessed with frogs on frog print. It was neon blue with more frogs on the fabric.
It actually sounds terrible.
Yeah. And then I sewed it by hand. And so, first of all, don't even get me started on how they told us what we were going to learn in home ec and didn't let us choose, because I'm not sewing damn pillows, in case anyone was wondering.
Well, it sounds like you actually did.
I did in the class, but I didn't carry that on throughout my life. And I sure as hell never made monkey bread again. Like,
well, you sure showed them.
yeah, well, let us choose what we want to learn, but then also like think ahead. And when you get into the real world, how do you balance a checkbook? How do you save money?
How do you pay your taxes?
Yeah. How do you invest in things?
How do you buy a house?
Yeah. So I'm a little bitter about that. And I wish someone would have told me or shown me. I mean, for me, the financial, like we joke about it, how I hate budgeting and all of that. But like, I think when I was 22 or 23, it got to the point where I had all of these bills. Like I was really sick from like 18 to 22 and I had all of these medical bills and then I had all of this other debt and I had to file for bankruptcy and I didn't know how to do it, what I was doing. Like I just knew I couldn't keep up with the bills that were coming in and they were garnishing my paycheck. And it, like I laugh about it now that like, oh, I hate budgeting, but it was really scary. Like I didn't know what to do. And we also joked about the cash advance place. Remember that story? So this is how smart I was with money. I was like, oh my God, cash advance. And they said something on the door about like how they give you money and there's no interest or blah, blah, blah. So I thought I just got money.
I feel like there was fine print where you inserted blah, blah, blah in your mind.
Probably. The fine print, blah, blah, blah. Turns out you have to give the money back.
With interest.
I feel like I didn't pay interest. I thought it was like
I feel like no one really lends you money without actually
Yeah.
collecting interest. So I think you might have blacked it out.
It was a bad news bears deal. So got out of that real fast. All of that to say, I've always struggled with money. Like it was a very big struggle to get to where I'm at now. And like how I taught you about emotional regulation and confrontation and communication, you really helped me understand like, Court, this is serious. Like this isn't something you get to just blow off. Like you have to have a plan and you have to be financially safe and all.
I was going to be sassy and be like, oh, who taught you that? I wasn't going to call myself sexy and beautiful and charming, but
I will always call myself that and not apologize.
But yeah, we definitely learn from each other in that way where you taught me about emotional regulation and identification because I was like 28 and I didn't know how to identify my emotions. So, but yeah, that was definitely something that we didn't unlearn our habits quickly.
No.
And so I think that...
And there was some frustration with each other in between, like getting to that point. But anyway, all of that to say, as much as I despise budgeting and money and all of that crap, I wish someone would have taught me how to do it because I probably wouldn't have been as resentful about it now. So...
Yeah, I would agree.
You're welcome.
It's a good lesson to learn.
I know that one made you happy. Okay, what's your third one?
My third one, I think perhaps this is maybe my biggest one.
Do you see my face?
I
I'm
do.
so
You're
excited.
very excited. Man, for Christmas, I should just stop buying you things and just tell you things.
This is all I need.
Just like podcast live with you.
Deep conversation, asking about questions in life. And
You know what would be fun is doing this as a live event.
Oh, that would be fun.
If you're listening right now, would you come to a live podcasting with us?
Oh my gosh.
That would be cool. Just do Q&A and we would answer it on the spot like we are now because clearly this is giving you a lot of energy.
I'm so happy. My face hurts from smiling so much. Okay,
All right.
go ahead.
So my number 3 and perhaps my biggest lesson that I wish I would have learned earlier is it's my life and I shouldn't let others' opinions rule it. And I think that this translated in a lot of different ways. I think obviously you're finding yourself at certain times throughout your life, whether that's fashion or what's most important to you or even just like what you want to study in school. I think that like you had mentioned earlier, there is typically a trajectory set forth before us that's like, this is how life looks. You go to school, you get good grades, you get a good job, you get married, you buy a house, you have kids, get a dog. All of those questions people still ask us, by the way. Why do you want us to have a dog so bad? Well, that's just because that's what you do. And so I think there's this plan kind of laid out for us. And I remember trying to fit into it. And I remember feeling like, I don't know, maybe someday this will click. Maybe someday this will feel more natural. But right now, this life that I'm trying to live out or live into or curate based on someone else's ideas of what a life should look like, I was like, I don't know, I'm not fitting into this right. And these cardigan sweaters, I don't like them.
You always go back to cardigans. Why is that a thing?
Because I remember
Cardies.
I remember wearing these clothes to work, which part of it I had to. I worked in the business and legal studies office at the university I went to, but I remember trying to fit into other people's styles because I was like, well, this is what they say business casual is, so I need to fit into this. Or trying to pursue a major that others thought I should pursue, or even just the way that I would play sports or whatever. I was trying to fit into these molds that other people had set before me. And I thought that if I felt like doing it any other way, that wasn't right, that was the wrong way to do it. And I would let that fear of what other people would think actually stifle my own style, my own creativity, my own, and I would say that I didn't let it stifle it to the degree that some people do. It's just that now I'm fully owning it, fully living into it. And if someone's like, that's not a good idea, I'm like, you're not a good idea. I'm just kidding.
Oh my gosh. No. Don't say that to people.
No, I'm just kidding. But now if someone, says that they don't like the clothes I'm wearing or the hairstyle I have, I don't really care. And I'm like, well, thank you for your unsolicited opinion. This is what makes me feel confident. And I'm going to continue wearing these clothes, having this haircut, doing this job, etc.
Your inner dialogue / commentary is fantastic. Like the things you're saying that you want to say to people.
Yeah, I don't actually say those things.
Right. I know you don't. That's why this is amusing to me. But so interesting. Your number 3 was actually my number 4, right? Or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think you said everything perfectly, because what I had written down was, you don't have to follow the path that's predetermined for you by society.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think of it on a higher level, like the hierarchy of our parents were taught this, their parents were taught this, and you are taught that you can't be anything without a degree because you need the degree to get a job. And so there's all of these, like I think of it almost like neurons and like neural pathways, like there's this big branching web that goes out everywhere, and you're told like, this is how you get ahead in life, this is what you do. And then when you try to buck against it, you're like, well, I don't need a degree to do what I want to do. Oh shit, they are going to make me have a degree to do what I want to do. So it feels really confined. And I think the reason a lot of us stay on the path is, one, we don't know better, right? We're young and we trust the people around us and our mentors. And it's not that it was ill-intended. They're just teaching us what they know. But 2, you feel scared if you go outside of the norm because that's not what people do, right? It goes back to the lone nut. I think of that video, like a lone nut can start a movement, but if no one comes out with you, there's a lot of shame and guilt and embarrassment and all of these things. So I definitely agree with what you said. And that was one of mine too. And luckily I knew there would probably be overlap. So I wrote down 3 extra ones. So we're still
good.
Yeah.
Glad that we don't have a perfectionist complex going on
here.
Nope,
sure don't.
So that is, like I said, probably my biggest one was not letting what others think dictate how I behave, dress, act, pursue in my life, etc. So, and you said your number 4 was not following the predetermined path.
Yes, but I'm now substituting a new number 4.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
All right.
But I agree with everything
sub-in?
You just said. My sub-in, so this kind of goes, I'm sensing a theme here. Like there's a theme being woven through all of this. So number 4 is, I wish I would have learned to identify who I was outside of my career a long time ago. And this one's big because I think it pairs with the predetermined path and the you work, go, tough it out. And so I don't know if anyone else can relate to this. I feel like a lot of things I share people can relate to. This one I'm unsure about because I don't know if this was just a me thing, but I became so immersed and defined by whatever I was doing in my career at the time and where I was working. And that's what I would pride myself on, that I made no space for anything outside of that.
Yeah.
So even when I think of like the unhealthy relationships I would be in for 3 or 4 years and then pair it with my career I was in, those were the two things, because that's what you did in life. You met someone, you settled down, and you got a job that paid your bills, and you worked really hard.
Yeah.
There was no talk of fulfillment and what makes you happy and codependency and toxic relationships. Like none of that did I know when in my 20s. And it stung, like it knocked me down a few times.
Yeah.
I don't really know what else to say beyond that. But so here, let me give you an example. When you are meeting a new person and say we're at a networking event or we're somewhere doing something, meeting new people, and you say, "Hi, my name's Beth. How are you? Hi, my name's so-and-so." What's the first question they ask after they meet you and learn your name?
So what do you do?
Yeah. And I get that it's a commonality within conversation. But when that's the first follow-up question when you're meeting someone, that communicates I'm placing my value of what I think about you based on what you do for a living. And truthfully, it's just a common question and it's making conversation. But for me, that got me into trouble because I didn't build anything outside of that. So when I had a really big career shift a couple of years ago, I was like, I'm Courtney and I'm just Courtney. And they're like, "Well, what makes Courtney Courtney?" And I honestly couldn't tell you. And so for me, I wish someone would have taught me along the way, it's okay to work hard, but find a job that brings you fulfillment and make sure that you're building who you are if this was taken away from you. So,
you know what, a really good example of this that I remember, we both went to a training where they tried to kind of undo that being the first question. So the facilitators made sure to say, you know, we're not going to ask each other where, you know, what our roles are, and we're not going to talk about the value of our association. Instead, we're going to talk about, you know, we're going to introduce ourselves, those that you're at the table with, based on these questions. And they were questions that really dug deep. Like you had to be super vulnerable with people right away. And that was the point, is we had 3 days and we needed to trust each other, and vulnerability and trust actually happen at the same time. So it's not like, well, I'll be vulnerable once I trust you.
Right.
Well, you're not going to build trust unless you're vulnerable with someone and they take care of your heart in that moment. And so we had to be vulnerable with strangers. And I just remember so vividly the facilitator calling out the exact two things that we were
going to do.
Yeah, like the exact things that we were introducing ourselves by, because that was natural. Like you said, it was just the natural thing at a networking event to find out, like, I don't know, what's your career? What do you do? What do you like to do? Whatever. Instead of asking that, it's, you know, what do you do? Or, you know, where do you work?
And I remember at the end of that exercise, so I think it was on the third day, we all had to stand in a giant circle around the room, and then someone else introduced us and they couldn't use any of that. So they would say, "This is Courtney. She's passionate and bold and loving and caring." And the whole room, like you could feel the energy in the air. And we did it also at our community listens where you had 6 minutes to share about yourself to that person, and then they would introduce you. So they're sharing out what they heard you say, and rarely did it talk about their profession. Rarely.
Well, and to this day, I honestly couldn't tell you the people who sat at our actual tables were called our family at this particular training. So our family table, I literally couldn't tell you what department each of these people even came from. I couldn't tell you what association they were from. I didn't know their titles, nothing, but I could tell you about their kids and some of the, you know, the past tough times that they had gone through, or, you know, some of the things that they were most excited about in their life. And so I knew all this stuff about them. And if anybody asked, like, well, what do they do? Where are they from? I'm like, I actually don't know what their title is. And that was super refreshing. I think that was the first training that we didn't really place that value solely on what we did professionally.
Absolutely. So I, again, wish someone would have fostered more of that. So what we had in that experience, and then at our community listens, like I wish that would have been something that was built in. That way one, we knew how to introduce ourselves in a way that we didn't define ourselves based on our profession, but we got to know people in that way as well. So that was my substitute number 4.
And shout out to Cherish.
Yeah.
Because the training,
we should have her listen.
the
And
training,
Chris,
yeah,
Chris just
Cherish
messaged me
and Chris,
today.
yeah. So they were our facilitators in the training that I was talking about, and they completely transformed the way my mind thought and the way that I thought about things in a variety of different ways. So, I still keep in touch with them, and they're mentors to me and stuff. So shout out to you guys.
Yeah. Okay. What's your number 4?
My number 4, you ready for this one?
Should I grab the couch?
No, it's
Okay.
not that exciting.
Bummer.
I wish that I knew that pushing my body to its limits isn't worth it.
That is a really good one.
Yeah, so I was a college athlete, and I played hockey. And at that point, I think I played for 16 years. So over the course of 16 years of playing hockey, I broke and tore and sprained a lot of things. And I was so overzealous for my sport and the pursuit of excellence that I would push through sickness all the time. And it was stupid. And the trainers, I remember, used to be like, if you don't, you've got bronchitis right now. If you don't stop skating, it's going to turn into walking pneumonia. And I was like, I specifically remember saying, well, has it yet? And they're like, well, not yet. And I'm like, then I'm going to keep playing. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. Or, playing through the sprains and tears, and, my foot was broken for 3 years, and I just kept playing. Part of it was because I didn't know it was broken. But also, once I figured it out, I was like, well, what's the worst that'll happen? I remember asking the trainers that all the time. What's the worst that'll happen? And they forbade me playing when I had torn my knee up. One game it was a particularly bad game. I had gotten a concussion the play before. I just made complete head contact with this girl, and it was actually on video, and my head disappears out of the frame because it went so far back when we collided. And so that happened, and then the very next play, I was so out of it because of the concussion. I didn't know it was a concussion, but the coaches sent me back out. The very next play, I got hit, and I wasn't like protecting myself the way I should have because I was so out of it. And in that hit, I tore my lateral meniscus, sprained my MCL, and got patellar tendonitis, which is the inflammation of the tendon that goes straight up your kneecap. So I basically screwed up my knee on every side. And I remember going to the trainers the next day, and I was like, hey, I can't bend my knee anymore. I don't know what's wrong. And so they were starting to do tests for that. And then they were like, hold on, look at me real quick. And so then they did the tests, and they're like, you actually have a concussion right now too. And I was like, wow, that sucks. Can I go back to class now? And so I would push through injuries like that all the time. And it was so stupid. I mean, when I think about it now, how many times my head got hit and how many times, there's this mentality in sports that you're just getting your bell rung.
Right.
No, you're not. You're bruising your brain. That's what's happening. Is the most sensitive organ in your entire body is sloshing up against your really hard skull. And I wish that I would have just taken it more seriously. And I pushed through a lot of injuries and a lot of illnesses until my body finally, I always used to tell people, after I came back from this, but I would say, if you push your body hard enough for long enough, soon it's going to push back and you won't like it. And that's basically what happened to me. And my body crashed in every way possible. And I was on a whole regimen trying to get myself fixed and talking to experts and all that. So I wish that I would have known that it's not worth it. Like, and I used to say, like, you're not going to the Olympics, so it's not worth it. But you know what? Even if you are, like, there's a lot of professional athletes out there who will just absolutely destroy themselves, and that's their choice. But when you look at it and you're like, bro, your career is done at 36. Like, you've aged out of the NHL, the NFL, all these hard hitting contact sports. And it's like, what are you going to do with the rest of your 60 years now that you've destroyed every part of your body and your brain has been, injured repeatedly throughout the years for what? For the sake of a game? So I feel like I learned that lesson a lot harder once I started feeling the ramifications later. in life.
Well, and my two thoughts as you were sharing that, my first thought was, again, look at the things we've shared on our list. That's a combination of you tough it out, you push through it, your predetermined path. Like if you're going to be an athlete, well, then you just better get used to it. And then I think even thinking outside of sports, I think this is applicable in other ways, because I think about people who party in college and they drink and they drink and they drink. They're like, yeah, it's just what you do in your 20s. Like, you party in college, but you're not thinking about the long-term effects of what alcohol actually does and the chemicals it releases, and that it's literally killing brain cells. And this isn't me getting on a soapbox, because I was that person. But I think when you're young, you think you can just push through it, and you, whether it's sports or drinking. And even like, I was just thinking about when I started running and I would get in those stupid Apple Watch competitions, and I did one with our friend, and I was so hell-bent on beating him. It was a week-long challenge, and I knew I didn't feel right. Like, I could tell I had pushed my limit. I could tell I hit the limit, but then comes the perfectionist, right? Like, let's bring that back around. And we both ended up getting super sick because we were
both of you. You were down for the count.
Yes.
And all the rest of us are like, yeah, we knew that was coming.
But I still won. I'm just going to put that out there. But all of that to say, like, I think that's applicable on so many levels that we think, at least that's what I remember, is like, you're young, like just push through it, or like just get through it. That we take advantage of the fact that at some point you're not young anymore, and that's not how it works. Like, you have one body, you have one set of your system, and so you do have to take care of it.
Well, and I remember, like, there were different instances where I had teammates asking me if I would please sit out from a drill because I didn't look good. I had my boot camp instructor be like, you need to sit the set out. And I'm like, no, you push through it. Like, this is what it is. And she's like, no, you need to sit down.
Yeah.
So, and I had a condition called postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So, I kind of forget that I had it / have it. I think you grow out of it. I'm not sure. I basically learned to mitigate the symptoms, but at the time my body was not handling my blood pressure well. And so it really was not just like, oh, sit down and you're pass out. Like, no, you'll literally pass out. Like,
right.
you need to sit down. And so but I didn't care. Like, when I got the diagnosis, I didn't care. I was like, I'm going to do whatever I'm going to do despite any diagnosis that I get. And
it's because we're young.
Looking
and we
back,
think we're invincible.
Yeah, it was pretty stupid. So anyway, that was my number 4. Moving on to number 5, our final
Don't make
lesson.
It sound like that. I have 2 backup ones tied, and I don't know which one to share.
Well, do you want me to share my 5th one in case I match yours?
Yes. Oh, thank God. Yes.
I wish that I knew how to set and enforce boundaries to better manage my energy and emotions.
I knew that was coming. Okay, say more about that.
Well, I mean, I said a little bit of it earlier that, I let other people kind of dictate what I did, how I felt, all of that. And I wish that I had known how to set boundaries and then enforce consequences after, because I think I had part of it. I think I knew when to say, like, I don't like how you treated me, and I'm not going to continue our friendship if you continue to make me feel this way. And then they would do it again, and there was no consequences, because I just felt bad when they would come back and be like, no, I'm really sorry. I won't ever do it again.
I met you when you were in the middle of that, and I was like, why are you letting this person treat you that way?
Yeah. Oh, and that happened to me all the time, though.
Ugh.
Is like, I was such a bleeding heart for the potential that people can have.
Yeah.
And I would defend when someone would treat me poorly, and I would say, well, they didn't really mean it. They were just going through a rough time, and people like you in my life would be like, yeah, but that's not your weight to bear.
Or
like
an excuse.
It's not an excuse to treat people poorly. Like, they should not be treating you that way. And so I think I would make these kind of invisible boundaries, because once they were crossed, nothing happened.
Right.
And so that kept me in a perpetual cycle of being treated in a way that I shouldn't have allowed.
Right.
But I never really understood what enforcing a boundary looked like, especially if it was someone that ran in your same group of friends, or was on your team, or was in your classes, or is in your family. Like, I didn't understand how to enforce boundaries once they were set and once they were crossed again.
It's kind of like, a map almost, or a plan, because it's so critical that you decide, one, what the consequence is if a boundary is crossed, and that you communicate that in a neutral state. Because usually when you have to enforce a boundary, you're already in an emotional state. So you have to, it's almost like if you're going to sing at a recital, you have to memorize and memorize and memorize and remember what's coming. That way, when the time actually comes, if you're not in a regulated state, that you can still execute and stick to it.
Well, because if you don't emotionally regulate while enforcing the boundary, it's just going to come off as retaliatory. And that's not it. I'm enforcing the boundary that I set forth. I gave you my expectations and I said, this is okay, this is not okay. And you continue to behave in a way that I had identified was not okay with me. And so this is just a natural consequence. These are the boundaries that I'm enforcing. And so, but if you're upset at the time, which you likely are going to be because they're doing something that you had identified as hurtful or upsetting before, then yeah, you're absolutely right. Like you have to remember, like, nope, this is where I have to come in and manage my emotions and manage my energy and just calmly say, these are the boundaries that I'm enforcing now because they were crossed again.
Which, think of how hard that is when we talk about things we wish we would have known when we were younger. One, our brains aren't fully done developing yet. And so when you're still in your 20s, you don't necessarily, one, have the knowledge about emotional regulation. Two, you're still developing. But three, there are so many pressures when you're younger of friendships and cliques and popularity and bullying and all of these different subcategories. So it's even harder because now we know to surround ourselves with people that lift us up and understand boundaries and respect it. But to be reaching for that and knowing that you don't have it developed yet, I think that's really tricky too.
Yeah. So that was my number 5. And you apparently knew that was coming. So I'm assuming we're going to have a sub in for your 5th one.
Well, we are. So I will use 5A to just touch on what you touched in because it goes along with boundaries. So 5A is I wish I would have learned to say no. And stop apologizing sooner.
Ooh.
And I think,
Stop Apologizing?
Yeah, I think I still haven't read that book. It's so funny.
It's real good.
Because you tell me about books and then people will be coming to me for recommendations and I'll be like, oh, have you read Girl Stop Apologizing? They're like, no, is it good? I'm like, well, I haven't either, but this is what Beth said. So
is it good? I don't know.
Yeah. And oh my God, we do it so much. We apologize for everything. And so that one I'm still working on because it's so ingrained in my brain that I have to be really cognizant and intentional to not apologize for things.
It's funny because the women's hockey league that I'm playing in right now, I typically would have played in a men's league or a co-ed league, but part of me wanted to kind of help grow women's hockey in this area and bring up the caliber and help other beginning players learn a little bit better. But part of it was that I didn't want the ego of men playing in the league. I had an experience that basically I was like, yeah, I don't need that again in one of the seasons. But what's interesting is you hear out on the ice. So typically you can hear players when they say things to each other, when they call for a pass, when they screw up and they say something. Well, in the women's league, I swear to you, I hear the word sorry like 30 times a game.
Oh, for sure.
And I'm even guilty of it. I'll make a bad pass and go, sorry.
Or we do it to each other. Like something in our road trip, I was like, I counted how many times you said sorry in the car. And I was like, I mean, I appreciate it, but it wasn't necessary. Like it's just like
an ingrained response to that didn't turn out how I thought it would.
Right.
I'm going to apologize now.
It would be really fun to make a list of things you could say instead of sorry. Like,
I think that'd be really helpful.
Like what you just said, that didn't turn out how I thought it would. Or, ooh, I didn't mean to do that. Like we should do that.
Yeah, we should.
Anyways,
make a cheat sheet.
So that's my 5A and saying no, which we've talked about before. Don't agree to things just because you feel guilty or you want to people please. It's either a hell yes or a hell no. And if it's not a hell yes, then let me tell you what, it's a hell no. And I feel like I've gotten much better about that in my 30s. In my 20s, I was still very much so into that people pleasing and perfectionism and all of those things. So you're not going to see this one coming. 5B. You're going to be like, what? So my fifth thing I wish I would have known or someone would have taught me how to be in tune with when I was younger is my intuition or my God gut.
Bizarre.
You didn't see it coming, did you?
No, because I thought you were.
So I am now. And I've been very intentional about. So to take a step back, I've always believed there's nothing random. Like there's not coincidence. Like everything has a reason. Everything has a connection. Everything has energy. There are signs everywhere. But I never leaned into it. Mm-hmm. And we were just sharing this story in St. Louis when we were out with Michelle that basically my mom shared with me in my late 20s that I had always been sensitive to things and I could always pick up on things. And so I shared the story of when she said that we would go into a room full of people when I was a child and like it would be an adult party or something, you know, like everyone would get together and I would tell my mom like, Mommy, don't go by that person. He's not nice. He's not a good person. And she's like, and you had never met this person in your life or seen this person, but you were right. Like he was not a nice man and like he shouldn't have been there. And so it's always been there, but I blocked it out because that's just easier, I think. So like, or I'm not sure.
Seems cool. It seems like a superpower.
It is. I think, but then I think there's also emotions because emotion and anxiety can give you the same feeling as intuition. So you have to be really good about discerning what's intuition and what's just anxiety and emotionally driven.
Yeah, I think I have the anxiety part.
You
just
maybe.
Like the like hypothetical situations I'll make up, and you're like, yeah, that's not intuition.
Sure. So you try though. You're like, is this intuition? So I call it my God gut because I do believe in God. And for me, I believe that's where I'm getting that energy from. I think I always had that ability, but no one ever taught me what it was, what it looked like, what I was supposed to do with it. And there was an experience I had in my late 20s, I think, where someone who had that same ability saw it and called it out and was like, oh, you have the gift of intuition and you're sensitive and you pick up on things. And then I learned about what it meant to be an empath. And so I didn't get that until later in my 20s. And at first I was kind of resistant to it. I was like, girl, I don't know what you were smoking or like what's going on. But once I kind of opened my mind to that concept and I stopped shutting it out and making it be this weird thing, I really have embraced it. And like our friends that know me now are like, you'll even share like, yeah, that's her God gut. And it's scary accurate.
Yeah, I would say that.
Yeah. So I guess I just wish I'm in tune with it now and I'm learning more now, but I wish I would have had like a mentor, I think, to kind of tell me what that journey was and what that would look like. And so I could have embraced that a little bit earlier.
Well, wow. There's 10 lessons, actually, 12? 12 lessons that we wish we would have known earlier than our 30s. And I don't know if that, I feel like some of ours are probably pretty common, but maybe not. So
with other people?
Yeah, for other people, with things that
I
they
would
wish
love
they would
to know that.
Yeah, I would too. So if you're listening to this episode and you're thinking of your own I wish I knews, we would love to hear from you over on the show notes for this episode at lifewithbethandcourt.com, and just navigate your way to the show notes for this episode, or on our social media channels when we post about the podcast at Life with Beth and Court on both Facebook and Instagram. As we always say, take what's helpful, leave the rest, and hopefully some things that we talked about today are helpful reminders, or maybe they're lessons for you for the first time as well. So as always, we enjoy our time with you. And until next time, keep building your best life.
Bye, guys.